We are all made of multiple parts, but we don't always know them all, how they fit together, or how to navigate through them. This can make us feel like we're missing something or incomplete, but in reality, it's actually the opposite. We are all complete, even you. And if you want to learn more about how, I made a whole nother episode about it, right here. But even though we are complete, we could still feel incomplete because we don't know everything about ourselves. But that's okay, because we'll never know everything about ourselves. So what we can do is try to learn as much as we can, and in doing so, feel complete. So how do we learn more about ourselves when we don't know all the pieces? Well, we can learn how from Lucy, who went through the exact same thing. And hopefully, by reflecting Lucy's story onto our own, we can see the symmetry between her and us and discover amazing things we didn't know before. This is Lucy. In 1974, Donald Johanson, a paleoanthropologist, discovered a fossil of Australopithecus afarensis, one of the hominin species that lived before our genus Homo. She was found in Hadar, Ethiopia, and her discoverers named her Lucy because the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by the Beatles was playing while they named her. Lucy taught us how to discover amazing parts of ourselves with just the pieces we have. She paved the way for some of the biggest discoveries in human evolution. But in order to appreciate the things we learned after Lucy, we have to know what we previously thought before Lucy. Before Lucy, the oldest known hominin was Australopithecus africanus, which was discovered in 1924 by Raymond A and dated to be around 3 to 2.6 million years old. We previously thought that hominins were adapted to eat difficult foods, like nuts, underground tubers, and tough meat, because of their larger teeth compared to Homo sapiens. And because of our assumptions about hominin diet, we previously thought that hominin's superior intellect was what separated us from our common ancestor with chimps, and the main reason for our survival. This was supported by the difficulty to find, utilize, and eat these foods, and the need for bigger brains in order to do so. And finally, because we thought hominin intellect evolved first, we previously thought that bipedal walking evolved much later in hominin evolution. We thought all of this from finding fossils. But Lucy wasn't any ordinary fossil. Usually, when we find fossils, there are only a few small bones, or even a single bone, that preserve. But an astounding 40% of Lucy's skeleton was recovered. Literally, from head to toe. At the time, Lucy was the most complete hominin fossil ever discovered. And her skeleton also included specific bones that gave massive insights into her life, like parts of her skull, jaw, vertebra, knee, pelvis, and femur. But what's key about the bones of Lucy and all hominins, including you, is that we have something called bilateral symmetry. Symmetry is a geometric transformation that leaves something unchanged. So bilateral symmetry is when an organism's left and right side of their body are identical, even when reflected. And it just so happened that Lucy's bones that were absent on one side of her fossil were present on the other, which allowed researchers to reflect her bones to get almost double of her original fossil, an almost complete view. Despite being one incomplete fossil, Lucy became the most famous hominin in the world, and because of her bilateral symmetry, she allowed people to discover amazing things about human evolution and themselves. So even if you don't know much about yourself, you can see the symmetry between Lucy and you, and use what you do have to discover what you don't. Lucy was dated to have lived around 3.2 million years ago, before Australopithecus africanus. So just by discovering Lucy, we were able to push the timeline of human evolution further back than anyone thought before. When researchers looked at Lucy's teeth under a microscope, they showed signs of microwear similar to gorillas that primarily eat soft fruits and leaves abundant in forests, not difficult foods. Some researchers think that Lucy had these big teeth from eating plants that contained grit, but some think that Lucy was an opportunistic feeder and survived by being able to eat hard foods in tough times. Either way, from just some of Lucy's teeth, we were able to learn that hominins could eat a lot more than we previously thought. When researchers looked at parts of Lucy's skull, they were able to use bilateral symmetry to view even more of it, and learn that her brain wasn't that big, only 1/3 of a human brain, and about the same size as our closest living relatives, modern chimpanzees. Some researchers point out that Lucy's skull shares similar features to the previously discovered Australopithecus africanus. But either way, by applying bilateral symmetry to fragments of Lucy's skull, we learned that hominins had much smaller brains than we previously thought. When researchers looked at Lucy's pelvis, they were able to use bilateral symmetry again to view the whole thing, and learn that it was short and broad. This implied powerful gluteal muscles for walking bipedally. Her femur was pointed inward, which allowed for more stable movement, and her knee joint could lock when straight, which implied being able to stand upright. Some researchers point out Lucy's more ape-like features, saying she may have spent a lot of her life still in the trees, rather than fully on the ground. But either way, by applying bilateral symmetry to Lucy's pelvis, we learned that hominins were bipedal before their brains were large. Although Lucy doesn't feel complete, only 40%, she still remains a staple for human evolution. Because of her bilateral symmetry, we were able to reflect what we did know to get an almost complete view of her and discover revolutionary things we didn't know. And hopefully, by learning about Lucy and reflecting her story onto your own, you can see the symmetry between her and you, and use the things that you do know about yourself to discover amazing things that you don't.